Hello everyone, and welcome back to my Know by Year. And also welcome to the first installment of I Was Influenced by You. And today's subject is this book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So consider this the soft launch, maybe the hard launch, I don't know, of a series called I Was Influenced by You, where I react to or try to consolidate things I've learned from pieces of content or media or books that you have recommended to me in the comments of my videos. I'm starting with this one, first of all, because it's a fairly short book, so I was able to finish it quickly. It's also got a very clear structure, right? The book is called The Four Agreements. It's also kind of a general life approach book, so I thought this might be a nice one to start with because it might set the tone for a lot of what's to follow, just through the approaches the author recommends. So without further ado, let's get into it, and thank you to the person who recommended this in my comments. Let's cover the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's not a lot of bad stuff I have to say about this. And the only complaint that I have is that as I was reading it, I got a little bit of that tone of spirituality that gets my hackles raising just a little bit. Now, I'm not an anti-spiritual person, but there is a kind of tone about people who are very into spirituality, meditation, the unknown, the woo-woo, some people call it. And I was getting a little bit of that tone from this book. I also got that tone from The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Tolle? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I apologize for that. But that's not to say that the tone of this is going to bother anybody else out there. It's a very much me-centric perception. And that was really the only negative thing I had to say about this book. I read this one while I was traveling, and it was only a 2-day trip, but like I said, I managed to finish this one and a couple of other books as well. Let's get into the first of my dog-eared pages, as I dog-eared all the pages that gave me something to think about later, that stuck out, that I wanted to share in this video. It used to be such a pet peeve of mine when people would fold the corners of their pages over, but alas, now I'm doing it myself because I still haven't reached the point where I can underline or highlight in a book directly. I think that might be a bridge too far, but now I am folding over the pages, so sorry if that bugs you. I won't show you. You won't be able to see the dog-eared pages. Before I get into the points, actually, I'm going to say what the four agreements actually are, and then I will discuss the points that I made a note of. So the four agreements are to be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So you can see why I don't really have any complaints about any of those. I do actually agree with everything that the author has said for the most part in this book. The introduction talks about how humans are domesticated by the ideas that we are kind of indoctrinated with as we grow up. So whether that's from our parents, from schools, from other influences in society, we get all these ideas that we have to live a certain way. And, excuse me, I've got the fall allergies. Some of these agreements that we can make with ourselves involve subverting or breaking those other agreements that we've learned through our domestication. Okay, so now getting to the first point that I have marked, which is within the chapter on the first agreement of being impeccable with your word. So the paragraph that I made a note of reads, "The human mind is like a fertile ground where seeds are continually being planted. The seeds are opinions, ideas, and concepts. You plant a seed, a thought, and it grows. The word is like a seed, and the human mind is so fertile. The only problem is that too often it is fertile for the seeds of fear. The human mind is fertile only for those kinds of seeds it is prepared for. It is important to see which kinds of seeds our mind is fertile for and to prepare it to receive the seeds of love." So at the end, you can kind of get that tone that I'm talking about with the seeds of love is what you must be preparing your mind for. And while I agree with it, it just has a little bit of that tone of the woo-woo. Again, not a bad thing. It's just something that I notice when I read books like this. So this really strikes me as relevant to my project of Know By this year because prior to this year, my mind was prepped for the seeds of consumerism. And after doing a Know By challenge, my mind then became prepped for the opposite, in a way, of seeds of anti-consumerism, seeds of material that will help me not buy, to help me weed all those plants that have been planted and flourished and growing about buying too many things and shopping and pursuing more, I guess, hyper-consumerism, and kind of breaking down that forest and planting a new one. So each idea that I've come across this year and all the pieces of content geared towards helping you break the cycle of consumerism have now been the ones that I've prepared my mind of soil for to grow those more helpful ideas. So that's, I think, why I marked that one, because it really felt relevant to the project of changing any habits, and in particular to me this year, changing my consumer habits, planting the seeds of the ideas that I want to grow in there, my new values. And then after that, the author provides numerous examples, one of them being Hitler and how he sent out seeds of fear and they grew in enough people and resulted in mass destruction. And this is all from the power of our communication, the power of our word. Hence, be impeccable with your words. Say what you mean and don't spread those seeds of things that are negative or things that we don't want to result in actions and consequences. And then also not to be swayed by the word of others in those cases where they're planting those seeds of fear, essentially. The next spot that I marked was another elaboration of this first agreement, be impeccable with your word. This is the first agreement that you should make if you want to be free, if you want to be happy, if you want to transcend the level of existence that is hell. It is very powerful. Tell yourself how wonderful you are, how great you are, how much you love yourself. Use the word to break all those teeny tiny agreements that make you suffer. So breaking those agreements that you've made with yourself based on those opinions of others or things that you learned growing up, telling yourself things that are more impeccable without sin, as he defines it in his book. Create new agreements with yourself. Just this one agreement can change your whole life. And this is actually not the first piece of content, of media. It's not the first book specifically that I've read that has this kind of idea in it. Actually, the first book that I remember reading this in was Gulliver's Travels, where the main character, Lemuel Gulliver, I believe. I could be remembering that wrong because it was years ago that I read this. I think I was in high school. But anyway, Gulliver is going to these different lands, and the fourth one is the land of horses. And the horses don't understand the concept of lying, because why would you say something if it was not going to be true? Why would you speak it if it wasn't true? It's just defeating the purpose of communication and language, is what I remember them believing. And that hit home for me even back then, and it reminds me of this first agreement here, be impeccable with your word. Why would you say something if it's going to have negative consequences? Why would you spread negative ideas? Why would you show negative things? Why would you try to influence people in a negative way, or a net negative? You know, you might not be specifically trying to make somebody feel bad with the content you create, but if it has a negative impact on the world, on the resources, on the environment, on the behavioral practices of humankind, then perhaps you shouldn't be spreading that kind of message. This other part that I really enjoyed reading is this idea that the author here is talking about it being possible to be impeccable with your word. It is possible. It is possible because I did it and I am no better than you. No, we are exactly the same. We have the same kind of brain, the same kind of bodies. We are humans. If I was able to break those agreements and create new agreements, then you can do the same. And this idea also strikes a chord because it's again that reminder that influencers are humans like us. Celebrities are humans like us. So it doesn't matter how big, how notable, how much notoriety, how popular, how famous somebody is, how many views their content gets, how many people go to their music tours, how many people know their names from presidential debates or whatever. These people are just humans. They're capable of changing their agreements with themselves. This might sound contradictory to the adage that people don't change, but I prefer to keep an optimistic and hopeful view of the world and of humankind in general, and believe that people can change. We're all made of the same stuff. We have that ability for empathy, for growth, for learning, to commit to being impeccable with our word, as the author suggests, and we can move forward. Spread more positive seeds this way. And again, this book is kind of forcing my language into that realm of spirituality that I'm not totally sure that I vibe with, but we're going to go with it for the duration of this video since this is the content that I'm reacting to. It's not the same as being impeccable with your meaning, just being picky for pedantic reasons. The second agreement, don't take anything personally. The next spot that I marked was in this section. Don't take anything personally, because by taking things personally, you set yourself up to suffer for nothing. Humans are addicted to suffering at different levels and to different degrees, and we support each other in maintaining these addictions. This was super powerful for me to read because, again, when you think about it with shopping, and he continues, humans agree to help each other suffer. If you have the need to be abused, you'll find it easy to be abused by others. Likewise, if you're with people who need to suffer, something in you makes you abuse them. They're asking for justification for their suffering. Their addiction to suffering is nothing but an agreement that is reinforced every day. Wherever you go, you'll find people lying to you, and as your awareness grows, you'll notice that you also lie to yourself. Don't expect people to tell you the truth because they also lie to themselves. This, again, is kind of in line with what I've been thinking about influencers. How I made those videos about how influencers use their audience by doing sponsorships and ads constantly, and then how influencers are actually allowing themselves to be used by taking offers from brands and doing sponsorships constantly. So this is kind of in line with that, where they have agreed to lie to their viewers in a way. Not everybody's lying, not all influencers are being shady about it, but in a way, in some cases at least, these influencers are selling a product in not totally open ways, or it's under the guise of supporting their channel, supporting their livelihood even. And if they're open about it, I need to take ads because this is how I make money, and etc. It's still kind of a little bit of a lie or a little bit of a deception, because they're still presenting something for you to want and to buy. And, I've talked about this on my channel before, so feel free to disagree with that perception. Feel free to watch my old videos on my thoughts about influencers and how I was influenced by these kinds of ads. But, do not expect people to tell you the truth, because they also lie to themselves. I think these influencers, for the most part, do believe that what they're doing is okay, and therefore they're lying to themselves. They're not seeing the damage of what they're doing, of how they're contributing to this consumerist society by doing the content with the sponsorships that they're doing, showcasing the products that they're showcasing, telling people to run and buy this, showcasing this Amazon must-have. All these things that we see on social media, the things that we are often pushed on social media, are examples of these people lying to themselves. In some cases, people having a shopping addiction and justifying it because it's their job. Anybody who's done a buying and decluttering cycle of videos, who receives products for free as PR and then declutters them, I kind of feel like is exemplifying this cycle, right? They're kind of lying to themselves, especially those who have tried to be more conscious with their own shopping and then receive things as PR and then declutter those things. It's that cycle again of doing the behavior without engaging with it in the same way, and therefore being able to lie to themselves and tell themselves that it's not the same. And they want to be addicted to that suffering of endless consumerism. And again, I don't know if I have to make an argument for endless consumerism being a form of suffering, or for being addicted to buying things and shopping being a form of suffering. I think most of you who are watching this video will be here because you have some sense of agreement of that point. So I'll try not to belabor it too much. If you have a problem with it, you can comment down below, and I'm happy to discuss with you how shopping has become a problem in today's society. And if you're somebody who shops normally, as in when you need something and not for fun or for other reasons, then you probably are not on the right channel, or you might not be watching this for the same reasons as the majority of the audience. I don't know. That could be making an assumption, and I could be breaking the third agreement right here in this little soliloquy. So let me move on. It was just so interesting about the addiction to suffering and how humans enable each other to do that. And I do think we see this a lot in shopping, because there's so much of condoning shopping behavior, enabling shopping behavior. That scene from Clueless where they're like, oh, get in the car, we're going shopping. Or is it Mean Girls? I don't know. But the behavior of shopping together is kind of like, especially for women and girls, it's like a bonding activity. We enable each other. We try to get each other to buy stuff so we feel less bad about buying our own stuff. Or if we're not with actual friends, we sometimes see pieces of content where creators are buying a whole bunch of stuff and doing hauls, and then we feel better about shopping and doing our own hauls. It's like we're in this community whether or not we're doing it in person. So this just made me really think about that. How humans enable each other to do these bad things. And then, you can apply it to any other habits that you want to. At the birthday parties, we all eat cake. At the bars and clubs, we all drink a lot and possibly do drugs. It's these environments enable groups of people to do these things together that we may or may not actively want to be doing. And if we have a problem with these behaviors, if we're alcohol addicts, sugar addicts, drug addicts, whatever other addictions we might have, and we go to these places, we know we're going to be enabled to partake in this behavior. If we're shopping addicts and we go to the mall, or even if we're shopping addicts and we hang out on any form of social media, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, we'll see the ads. We'll see people who have shopped and are showing the spoils of their endeavors. Like, we'll see it, we'll be enabled, we'll be encouraged to keep our addiction and keep on suffering. And so back to not taking things personally, another excerpt here. As you make a habit of not taking things personally, you won't need to place your trust in what others do or say. You'll only need to trust yourself to make responsible choices. You are never responsible for the actions of others. You're only responsible for you. When you truly understand this and refuse to take things personally, you can hardly be hurt by the careless comments or actions of others. And then he goes on to say, you can travel around with your heart completely open and no one can hurt you. You can say, I love you without fear of being ridiculed or rejected. You can ask for what you need. You can say yes, or you can say no without guilt or self-judgment. And again, a little bit of my life online has kind of solidified this idea in my life, in my perception of comments, careless comments and actions of others in some cases. Again, I'm very lucky to have cultivated an audience that is thoughtful for the most part and leaves comments that lead to future reflection and discussion. And I'm deeply appreciative of that. Occasionally, there will be a more careless comment or a more judgmental comment. And for the most part, I'm able to see these for what they are and engage with them in the appropriate way as far as, generally I take people at their word. So if they're making a comment about how I'm buying things on my no buy or whatever, it's like, well, they clearly haven't seen the backlog of my videos and, where I started versus where I am now and my goals. And there is a lot of power in not taking something personally. And so it was helpful to read this from an outside perspective as well and apply it to this kind of modern day career, even if it's not a career for me, of content creation and exposing yourself to the opinions of thousands of people online. The next point is from the third agreement. Don't make assumptions. So we make assumptions. We have millions of questions that need answers because there are so many things that the reasoning mind cannot explain. It's not important if the answer is correct. Just the answer itself makes us feel safe. This is why we make assumptions. We make all sorts of assumptions because we don't have the courage to ask questions. These assumptions are made so fast and unconsciously most of the time because we have agreements to communicate this way. We have agreed that it is not safe to ask questions. We have agreed that if people love us, they should know what we want or how we feel. When we believe something, we assume we are right about it to the point that we will destroy relationships in order to defend our position. Is there a better summary of communication online? Right there. And I too have fallen into this trap. I have made assumptions or I have felt things in response to watching other creators' content. And I have also not asked them the direct questions of where they're motivated. And this is a tricky one because I do think that there are content examples, pieces of content out there, creators that have certain framework for what they create that are net negative as far as their impact on these platforms. And I'm thinking again, specifically of consumerism, consumerist examples, making us feel like we need to buy something or we need to want something or we won't be complete if we don't have something. And I do think that these forces need to be combated with forces of positive consuming, of you don't need this to be happy, of I'm not going to buy this, this is why, things like that. So it's not that we're necessarily making an assumption, but there are examples that stand alone that can be refuted with examples that also, kind of stand alone, or at least as part of this ecosystem, maybe not standing alone, I guess, in that case. They stand as part of this ecosystem of societal attitudes towards consumerism. So again, I know this book was not intended to be about consumerism. It's just that this channel is about consumerism, and I can't help but relate what I read to my personal main goal of personal change this year, which is my no buy, not buying stuff, changing my attitude, relationship with shopping. So again, making the assumption that everyone sees life the way we do is an interesting conundrum because, again, I've talked about this many times, but social media examples of consumerism normalize the extent of overconsumption that we see so much on these platforms. It's like a societal responsibility needs to be undertaken here. We need to start being collectively responsible for consuming closer to just what we need. And again, I'm not advocating for no excess or saying that we all have to just have the same number of stuff. Like, that's not what I'm saying is the answer here. But there needs to be some kind of responsibility, or at least the notion of responsibility in our habits of consumerism. And maybe that'll decrease the assumptions, the assuming that goes on if we can reasonably feel that people have the best intentions. And again, that in itself could be another assumption. But I guess the thing with this third agreement is that it's trying to explain why we have a fear about being ourselves around others. And I would actually argue that excessive consuming is not an integral part of anybody's self. It's an environmental factor, it's a societal factor. We have legitimate needs, and then there are wants to acquire things beyond our legitimate needs. And because it's been inflated to such a degree, I don't think this element of shopping being a core facet of one's personality is actually real. And I just think that's been imposed on us by the way society's been going, by capitalistic goals as far as making consumers want more and buy more. And it's not an integral part of being ourselves. And when we're changing a habit like stopping shopping, not making assumptions about ourselves can also be helpful. And that's another example he gives here. We make assumptions about ourselves, and this creates a lot of inner conflict. I think I'm able to do this, or you think you're not able to do this, and that assumption can impact how you interact with your goals. Or sometimes you need to stop lying to yourself about what you truly want. Okay, next we're in the fourth agreement, always do your best. And this is perhaps the one that brings me the most peace and gives me the conviction to continue this little creative project that I'm doing by being here on the internet with you. So if you're doing your best, you will feel good about yourself, even if you still make assumptions, still take things personally, and still are not impeccable with your word. You will become a master of transformation. Practice makes the master. By doing your best, you become a master. And I guess this is kind of how I feel about my journey this year. I've been constantly trying to do my best. Even though I've failed numerous times, the intention has been there, the commitment has been there, the reflection has been there because of these videos. And so I feel justified in saying that I'm becoming an expert at no-buy. I'm becoming a master at consumer behavior. And part of it is doing this education of reading these books and other books too, right? This one is actually perhaps the least directly related to consumer habits. The other books that I have coming up are The Hacking of the American Mind, for example, Ultra Processed People, which again seems not related to consumer habits, but is actually very related, even though the focus is on food. I have books about brands, Brand Wash, No Logo. I have marketing books, Hooked and Indistractable, and then a little bit of productivity as well in there, just as far as how we consume our time. And by seeking these things out, by taking this journey, reflecting, deciding that I need to gather more information and educate myself to be able to stick to my goals and come up with more reasons, if you will. It's not that I need to come up with them, but like feel that sense of conviction in my reasons, supported from outside information. Even the philosophy that I've come across is kind of being applied to my goals of anti-consumerism, dare I say. Because I've constantly been trying to do my best, I know that my intentions are coming from the right place, and I think this can be the same for any of you out there. No matter how many times you fail something, if you are genuinely trying to do your best with the information that you have, you are really beyond reproach. And if somebody is going to judge you or make assumptions about you, then they are breaking one of the four agreements there, making assumptions. And I would argue that by judging other people, you are not acting the goal of doing your best. You're not acting, being your best also involves, to me, being kind and just towards others. Because if we remember that everybody is a human just like us, we're made of the same stuff, then I think that it's important that doing our best involves treating each other with respect. And you have to stand up and be a human. Respect your body, enjoy your body, love your body, feed clean, and heal your body. Exercise and do what makes your body feel good. If you are impeccable with your word, if you don't take anything personally, if you don't make assumptions, if you always do your best, then you are going to have a beautiful life. You are going to control your life 100%. The four agreements are a summary of the mastery of transformation, one of the masteries of the Toltec. And again, this is Toltec wisdom that he's pulling from, ancient Toltec wisdom. And I don't really know anything about that. I don't really know if there's a quantifiable way to say that four agreements will summarize the principles of a life well lived. And this is why we collect information from multiple sources, right? And if a piece of information gives us an expanded perspective, a new way of looking at something, or even confirms a way of looking at something that we've been feeling a certain way about, I think it can be valuable no matter where it comes from, no matter if it's based on a religion or political group or any aspect of society that we don't really agree with or don't prescribe to being a part of. I think it's helpful to gather information from all of these sources. And again, the author goes on here, in the beginning it was so hard, so difficult. If you fall, do not judge. Do not give your judge the satisfaction of turning you into a victim. So he talks in this book about how in your mind there's a judge and a victim, and the judge can make you a victim of your own mind. And you don't have to live like that. If you follow these four agreements, you can kind of be at peace within yourself as well. So stand up and make the agreement again. Okay, I broke the agreement to be impeccable with my word. I will start all over again. I'm going to keep the four agreements just for today. Today, I will be impeccable with my word, not take anything personally, not make assumptions, and I'm going to do my best. So if you break an agreement, begin tomorrow and again. So again, if you fail your no buy, begin again. Begin tomorrow. Begin the hour after you break it. Whatever whatever makes the most sense. And it will become easier and easier until someday you will discover that you are ruling your life with these 4 agreements, and also ruling your life with the approach of not buying becoming the first idea, and buying becoming more of a response to things you actually need. And the last couple of points that I marked are in the last section about breaking old agreements. So the path to freedom. This next section talks about how the real you is still a little child who never grew up. Sometimes that little child comes out when you are having fun or playing, when you feel happy, or expressing yourself, painting, writing poetry, playing the piano. These are the happiest moments of your life, when the real you comes out, when you don't care about the past and don't worry about the future. There's something that changes all that. We call them responsibilities. So we are still children, but we have lost our freedom through those responsibilities. And again, it's talking about freeing yourself from that role of judge and victim in your mind. You don't have to judge yourself. You don't have to be a victim either. And it also talks about not blaming the people who domesticated you, the parents, the teachers, the people in human society. They didn't control their programming, and they couldn't have behaved any differently, therefore. But we can break free using these 4 agreements. So once we've been programmed with the habits of consumerism, we then have to break free from those as well. And I feel like I'm sounding a little bit like a broken record here, but again, I just feel like it's such a powerful programming in today's society, in today's capitalist society, where the value is on freedom to create things, freedom to produce things, freedom to sell things to people, freedom to market. And these things are all such high values, right? The thought of governments or people stepping in to take away these freedoms is something that most people naturally recoil from. And I'm not necessarily here to say that we need to be okay with letting go of those freedoms, but it's just that humanity as a whole has lost the plot a little bit as far as what we're prioritizing. It's not that these freedoms need to be restricted if humanity would respond more responsibly to consuming things, right? If we didn't overproduce things, then we wouldn't have to demand that governments restrict production. If we just focused on what people actually need and nurturing our spirits, making sure everybody has the kind of life where they can get enough sleep, eat good food, exercise, and have some social interaction. If we prioritize those things as a collective, then we wouldn't need to be overproducing things. We wouldn't need to be striving for more and more resources as far as owners of companies and things like that. And I'm not necessarily advocating that the governments have to step in and ban things unless humans can't get the plot together and work responsibly amongst themselves. And again, this is not supposed to be a political channel or anything of the sort, anything even remotely close to that. But humans haven't really demonstrated the ability to be responsible as a collective about production and consumerism and capitalist tendencies. And if it's going to destroy the planet before we can figure it out, then intervention has to be made. And I guess the intervention I'm personally comfortable with, for obvious reasons here, as you've seen, is sharing my story and encouraging others who desire to take more personal agency and responsibility on their own. I've been thinking actually about whether it's possible to start a social media movement of sorts. We saw the underconsumption core trend. If we didn't see it directly on TikTok, we might have seen videos of YouTubers talking about it and how it kind of represents a response to overconsumerism in society, and how these trends are often like a little bit of a back and forth, right? We'll kind of overconsume and underconsume, and then there's like, oh, I want to consume too much again, or like making fun of under consuming, where it's like, this is my one book, and then there's 10,000 books in the background, and it's like a seesaw. But I wonder if it's possible to create a kind of movement of anti-consumerism, conscious consumerism perhaps, to stay on brand with my channel here. Something that's not a trend, but just a group of people that really want to spread the message of conscious consumerism. And here we go, lest we start a religion or some kind of other group. It's the Church of No Buy. But I don't know. I'm going to be thinking more about this for the year to follow this No Buy challenge. I have been thinking about maybe starting a No Buy newsletter as far as writing my thoughts and creating this group of people who might want to engage with these ideas through the written word. I don't know. I've also been thinking again. I talked about the movie Fight Club in a video a couple of weeks back. And I don't know. I've been thinking about that too, where they had a group of men in their case who were kind of trying to take down capitalist society, trying to take down the people at the top, trying to spread the message that we shouldn't be living like this. And they were doing it in violent ways. I don't want to be violent, obviously, but I just am so curious as to whether there's a way that we could maybe have a group of people. I mean, I guess most of my audience identifies female, so a group of women. But it could be anybody. I'm not exclusive as far as that goes. I wonder if there's a way to cultivate a group of people who have this goal together, have this shared goal, and could have a group project in some way. So drop your comments on that, drop your thoughts. I'd be so curious to see. And again, it's something I'll be exploring for the year to follow, trying to make more of an impact in this goal of conscious consumerism, of showing this on the platforms, of inspiring people to stay the course if they're already conscious consumers, to have a community of people who prioritize this, and then to also kind of gently suggest that other people might feel more satisfied and happy in their own lives if they found something similar, if they wanted to participate. So anyway, that's kind of what's been on my mind lately. A chat inspired by The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, a Toltec wisdom book recommended by somebody in my comments. I have no idea how I'm going to title this video because obviously I read a lot of excerpts from this book, but the subject was kind of reflected onto my no-buy year, as everything is on this channel, and then here we are ending with ideas for collective community projects. So I don't know, but if you've made it all the way to the end, thank you for being here. Your presence means the world to me. It really bolsters my own confidence in what I'm doing and my hope for the future of consumer society, to see that others also care about this, as I am starting to care more and more and more about this, and being inspired to take action, try to take action, find some way that I can do more on this topic, on this subject, on this crusade against consumerism in the time after my no-buy year. Anyway, I'll wrap this one up here today. Bye for now, and see you in the next one.